As somebody who has adored Green Lantern from pretty much the first issue that they've ever read, and is now a self-proclaimed Green Lantern fanboy, I've often started thinking about one question. Who's like the best? Like, who really stands above them all? Maybe I really mean favorite, but I'm really curious about this thought because when it comes to Green Lantern, there are so many characters that you can choose from. There's literally around 7 or 8, I think. I don't know. I'll edit the actual number on the screen. But out of the absolute mass amount of characters that there are in the world of Green Lantern, I think when it comes to who is the greatest, it boils down to just 3 characters. Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, and John Stewart. All of which for their own obvious reasons. And then really, out of those 3, it kind of more or less boils down to just 1. And that one is really obvious. But today I thought, you know what? I want to throw another name into that ring. I have gathered the evidence, I have drawn out the conclusions, and I present my findings to you, the intrepid jury and audience of today's video, because I have got a theory. And that theory is that I think Jessica Cruz could be the greatest Green Lantern of all time.
What did he say?
Her origin story is a little convoluted because it spans over multiple DC Justice League issues, so I will briefly summarize it for you. Jessica Cruz is someone who deeply suffers with agoraphobia and anxiety, i.e. the irrational fear of being able to step outside her apartment. She's too afraid to go out because she's been traumatized by an event in her past where all of her friends were brutally murdered in front of her eyes, and she was next on the docket but managed to get away just in the nick of time. This, of course, gave her a bunch of mental health issues, chief of which is agoraphobia and anxiety. Then, through Justice League multiversal shenanigans, Jessica inherits a power ring from an alternative universe, one that feeds off her fear and drains her own life force whilst doing so. Which isn't typically how a Green Lantern power ring actually works, but once again, this is from an alternative universe, so we're just gonna let that one slide. But then, through even more shenanigans, in an event known as the Darkseid War, Jessica Cruz sacrifices her life in order to save one of the other Justice League characters, but by doing so, she overcomes great fear, and bada bing bada boom, presto bango, she inherits a genuine power ring from the Green Lantern Corps itself in the main official Justice League universe, and thus starts Jessica Cruz as a Green Lantern in the world of DC. In the main 9-volume run, which spans a total of 57 issues, we witness the origins of Jessica Cruz starting her time as a Green Lantern pretty much the week later. So she's still really new into the world of Green Lantern. She doesn't really know how to use the ring, and we start from pretty much that page all the way until the very end of her story and her run. And in this time, we witness a number of awesome feats that she accomplishes as a Green Lantern. She goes up against the Red Lantern Corps, defending the Earth from absolute destruction. She defeats the first Lantern, Volthoom, and she goes back in time to train the first Green Lanterns that were ever established canonically in the world of Green Lantern. Don't get confused, Volthoom is not a Green Lantern. He's the first Lantern, but that doesn't make him a Green Lantern. There is a difference, but that's an explanation for another video. She goes against the Phantom Ranger, going toe-to-toe with a ring that can inherently use any power of the emotional spectrum. She has been an official member of the Justice League, and one of my personal favorite feats that she's done is literally binding an entire planet together, preventing it from being destroyed while a sun goes into supernova. And these are genuinely just some of the feats that she's managed to accomplish in her time as a Green Lantern in her main canonical run. And look, I know what you're saying. If you're simply here to compare power levels and, feats of awesomeness, Jessica Cruz does not stand a chance. John Stewart was literally the leader of the Green Lantern Corps at one point. Hal Jordan is Hal frickin' Jordan, and Kyle Rayner becoming a being known as Ion. So, yeah, Jessica's done some pretty incredible stuff, but really when it comes down to what everyone else has done, it doesn't really compare. So it's not the feats that she has done that makes her the Gugalote. It is in fact because she's nobody. Because Jessica suffered so much from her past trauma, she wasn't able to leave her house for 3 years. For 3 years, she did nothing with her life. Her only source of connection came from talking to her sister or her therapist. She was unable to keep a job, she couldn't go to any parties, she had no special significant relationship with anybody. All she did was sit at home, too afraid to go out or do anything or be with anyone. She doesn't have a glamorous job. She's not a military tactician. She's not an Air Force pilot, and she's not even creative enough to be an artist or musician or anything of that nature. She doesn't stand out in any significant way. She is just the everyday person trying desperately to get a hold of her own mental health. For her, her greatest success often is just getting out of bed in the morning or being able to clean the apartment around her. She's someone who is struggling to find her place in the world and desperate to be able to cope with just the day-to-day aspects of life. And I can tell you right now, I completely relate to that. Well, I mean, not the trauma stuff, but like the getting out of bed stuff. That's tough. But despite having such large battles to overcome with her mental health, she still manages to push through. She learns to manage these doubts and overcome them. She learns to find an alternative perspective of how she views herself, so she doesn't see herself as a useless human being. And as an audience, we begin to see that her greatest battle comes from her growth and maturity in how she becomes more emotionally literate, which is the entire concept of Green Lantern being personified through a broken character. The entities themselves are literal manifestations of human emotion and are quite often sometimes the Green Lantern's greatest battles, which makes so much of what a Green Lantern goes through about emotional literacy. Coming to terms with and understanding how we feel does not dictate our actions, that it is our will that overcomes our emotional state that allows us to take control of our own narrative and story. So putting that ideology together with somebody who has completely succumbed to their mental health state, which is literally the perfect combination of storytelling. And this is where I feel like characters like Jessica Cruz really has the advantage over someone like Hal Jordan. Okay, so at this point, we probably can't really say that Jessica Cruz is the greatest Green Lantern of all time, purely because there are so many characters in the world of comic books that deal with mental health in some way. You have Ghost Rider, you have Sentinel, you have Moon Knight, you have probably a great number of X-Men characters that deal with that in some way. You have Batman, for Christ's sake. And all of these characters have their own trauma, have their own issues with their mental health. And then there are obviously the entire itinerary of other Green Lantern characters that we could go into discussing as to what makes them arguably the greatest Green Lanterns of all time. And I wanted to talk to you about who is more than likely the number one contender, which is of course Hal Jordan. I mean, he is literally called the greatest Green Lantern of all time in the comic books. So I guess case closed, I guess? I don't know. And in a lot of ways, Hal Jordan is the embodiment of will itself. His story is constantly one that is of driving and striving forward, of overcoming your fears and anxieties and your rage and your greed. And he's the character that has the cool job, gets the girl, even though sometimes he really shouldn't have gotten the girl, but then a writer got his hands on his character that really did a number on it, and now everybody kind of is a little bit put off by that. And he always saves the day. In the same sense that Superman is the immovable object that corrects the world onto the more righteous moral path, in that same sense, I would say that Hal Jordan acts like the unstoppable force. As disregarding what anyone says, if it's the right thing to do, Hal Jordan will go and do it. There is no stopping him. And this is what I truly love about Jessica's characters, because in so many ways, she is the opposite of Hal Jordan. Two ends of the same spectrum, one filled with confidence and knowing the right path to take, and the other filled with self-doubt, unsure of every step that they make, and barely able to shut down that internal monologue that screams that you are a terrible person and everything that you do is wrong. And that's what Jessica has to go through every single day. Every single time she puts on that ring, every single time that she wants to make a construct, she has to go and overcome that thought again and again and again. But then that's what makes her so great, because she does do that. She goes from a life trapped inside an apartment to exploring the galaxy of planets and alien life and protecting it all. And she travels through space, going through all of it. And slowly but surely through this run, she begins to overcome her anxiety entirely, so that by the end of the issue, she's no longer feeling so dragged down by her past. Jessica Cruz is by far the most relatable Green Lantern. Rather than being a beacon of inspiration that drives and propels everyone into following the right path, she is somebody who doesn't really know her place in the world, who is daunted by the legacy of characters and worlds that are out there, a part of the Green Lantern Corps, but she steps up and rises to that challenge. Her act of heroism becomes one of self-growth in understanding that you don't have to be held back by the thoughts and feelings that are in your mind. And what is so beautiful about her character is how many people out there really relate to her and enjoy her story because of how well it depicts the struggles of going through mental health. So many times whenever I click on a Jessica Cruz video or a Reddit post, it's incredible to see the love and support she gets from everyone, not just myself, which is fantastic to see. And because of this, that to me makes her one of the greatest Green Lanterns of all time. So there you have it. I rest my case. And I hope at the end of the day, at the very, very least, I have convinced you to give her story a chance. If you haven't already read it, if you're not sure about her, then all you got to do is pick up the Rebirth Run, Volume 1. You'll read a fantastic story about such a fantastic character.